Welcome one and all to Sovereign Nature Initiative's monthly talk. We have an eco talk today lined up for you all, and glad to welcome faces familiar and unfamiliar to this conversation. We gather once a month to hear from leaders and thinkers in art, technology, theory, and ecology. And we are Sovereign Nature Initiative. Hi, I'm Seth Boakley. I'm the writer in residence at Sovereign Nature Initiative and also the MC for many of our events. Joined today by Caitlin and Catherine from Sovereign Nature Initiative as well. And again, some familiar faces here and some new faces. So welcome one and all. We will get started, I hope, in a few minutes. We're actually still waiting on our honored guest for today, Chris Nwachukwu, who will be speaking with us about his organization and initiative, the Green Promise Initiative in Nigeria. But while we are gathering, I wanted to say hello and let you all know a little bit about what's going on at Sovereign Nature Initiative. And I will tag team this a little bit with Caitlin or Catherine. Feel free to jump in. We are very excited to let you all know we're going to be opening up registration very soon for our first ever live and in-person event called the Experimental Zone #1. It's going to be May 21st in Amsterdam. And if you're able to come, it's going to be open. We're going to be having some incredible conversations. We're hosting art installations by acclaimed installation artists Marshmallow Laser Feast out of London, as well as Entangled Others Studio from Lisbon. We're going to be hosting incredible conversations really about the intersection of art, technology, and ecology at a beautiful space called De Keuvel, which is an old shipyard in Amsterdam. This is, again, our first ever live and in-person event, and we hope it will be a chance to celebrate and explore and experiment with all of the ideas that have been sort of percolating and gathering at the various hackathons and online events that we've been hosting. So again, that's May 21st. If you can sort of save the date for now, Caitlin just put into the chat a link to our website. We're going to keep updating that, and you'll see more and more of the information fill in as far as speakers that will be joining us. But it's going to be an incredible event, live music, and again art and demonstrations of technology. So hope that you all might make it all the way over to Amsterdam. And I think Chris is here. Fantastic. I also want to mention that we are in the last 2 weeks of our creative writing competition that's called Nature Speaks. Some of you might have seen this call for submissions. This is something that I'm leading as writer in residence here at Sovereign Nature Initiative. It's a chance to, it's a literary competition where we're asking you to write from the perspective of nature. So write a monologue as a patch of moss, write a set of song lyrics as a leopard, write a poem from the perspective of a tree. The winner of the Nature Speaks competition will be featured at our Experimental Zone event in May. And we'll also receive real cash prizes. It's a really cool initiative. Caitlin will also put the link in the chat. If you are a creative writer, or even if you are not a creative writer, we encourage you to submit your ideas, your original writing, and if you can spread the word as well, if you know folks that are poets or creative writers, we really want to get the word out and get as many submissions as possible. Again, there are real prizes and a chance to get your poem or piece of writing published as part of our Nature Speaks competition. And so please do submit there. Chris, you're with us, yeah? Is that Chris?
Thank you.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, that's
welcome.
Me. I'm so sorry. I've been battling with my internet.
Nope, no worries.
So it's just has been the issue, but I finally. All right.
We're here.
So how do I get off? How do I get off this background from the whole image? It's kind of.
Oh yeah, you do view
Yeah, so Chris, if you want to go below to, you see where you can mute yourself or turn your video on or off? There should be an arrow pointing up, and then you'll be able to choose virtual background, and then you'll be able to either remove the what you have up now, or you'll be able to choose another one.
We'll give Chris a second to adjust. And yeah, Chris, let's keep working through this. Make sure we have a really good connection so we can hear you loud and clear. We're delighted that you can join us today and can share a bit about Green Promises.
Yeah, I'm back.
Hey, welcome back. Also, just want to mention, hey, really quick, Chris, just to lay the table for today. We're going to have a conversation with Chris, and there'll be definitely time to ask questions of Chris about his initiative as we're talking. So, and in general, feel free to put questions in the chat, and then that also goes to Gundeep, your question about Nature Speaks. If you want to just even type that into the chat, that's kind of an easy way to keep the flow of information going. But please do, go ahead and ask your questions. So Chris, if we could just, I'll just give you another minute. Do you have a presentation you want to do like with a screen sharing?
I'm supposed to have a presentation, but let's see how we can do it now.
Chris, your connection isn't so strong. Why don't you try turning off your video to see if that will make it a bit easier?
Yeah.
Let me get that.
Chris, would it also be possible for you to dial in on your phone, perhaps? Maybe you could send me your presentation.
Okay. Let me do that. Let me send it through. Let me send it through to the email.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and two, if Chris, if phone proves to be better for this conversation, you can also call in. That's fantastic. You can also send us a link to anything that you might want us to share as far as like a video or a slideshow if you have a link. But let's first start by just getting your voice, because we'd love to be able to talk more easily.
All right.
And Gundeep, do you want to? Oh, you just wrote it in. Thank you.
Yeah, I just typed it in. If that's okay. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you. So Gundeep asked about the Nature Speaks competition. Would it be an idea to also send an audio narration of your poem along with the poem lyrics? I love that idea. We're exploring that right now. The question of recordings of poetry. I've been getting involved with the poetry NFT community, who are, I don't know if I'm seeing a nod there. Maybe you've seen some stuff like
sounds amazing. Yeah. But I've not seen any work, but yeah, sounds amazing.
I'll put a link in the chat about some of the stuff I'm seeing. It's a really interesting conversation that's beginning. A lot of poets, just like visual artists, are sort of seeing how Web3 is a platform for publishing and also valuing, their work in a different way. But what's interesting too about NFTs and digital expression of poetry, of course, is that it's quite easy to include an audio recording element or even a video element. So a lot of poets are creating these kind of video works that both have animation and also the voice of the poet, him or herself, speaking their poetry. And I love that. And so my short answer to you is, right now we're just really focused on the poetry itself. So like what it is on the page. But if we, I think the winners and the runners up, I think we'll explore that. Like, meaning once we have a jury that's going to select the winning poetry, and then once we do that, I think those poets will be invited to record their own poetry and make it into an NFT, which will look like a little video essentially of their work. I also just would encourage you to, as you're working and like exploring that world, get into it, because it's like a lot of poets are just sort of diving in and getting to know other people in that world. I don't know if you're on social media, is it sort of community on Twitter especially, who are doing this work of recording themselves and then minting NFTs of their poetry and
right.
Here,
yeah, and also every narration is unique. Then it also makes it special, even if it's the same poem. and by
Yeah,
the same
exactly.
person.
And I'm by background a playwright, so I love working with poets on their own poetry, but I also love working with actors. So I also think there's an idea out there to maybe, and again, I'm not saying this is for our competition, but even just for the future for your own work, if you're a poet, is maybe work with a different speaker to record your poetry. I'm going to put a link in the chat to, this is one of the marketplaces that's been created by a poet named Ana Caballero, who's one of the leaders in the Web3 poetry community right now, called the Verse. That's kind of a funny pun, like a metaverse, but with verse.
Yeah.
Poetry. Are you a poet, Gundeep?
No, actually, quite the opposite. I'm a software developer, but I like to write. I like creative writing.
Then you absolutely are a poet. That's great. That's great. We welcome submissions from all. So Chris just wrote me about the slide. Sorry, give us just a second, y'all. Thanks for your patience with a little bit of technical challenges here this afternoon. So yeah, Chris, do you want to? How's your connection now? Or were you able to call in on a different line?
Yeah, no problem. I can work with the voice. Maybe when the internet is okay, I can use the video.
We got you, Chris. We hear you loud and clear now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Chris,
So
is it
how do we
okay?
start?
Can I give you a little introduction?
Yes, it's okay.
Is that all right?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Welcome to our first ecology talk of 2022. We are featuring Chris Nwachukwu today, founder of the Green Promise Initiative, based in Nigeria. As a self-proclaimed radical nature lover, eco-evangelist, environmental educator, and community mobilizer, Chris will share with us today the need for environmental consciousness, something he defines as a state of awareness and responsiveness toward the natural world, and an understanding of the role humans play in protecting it. He's also going to share a little bit about the history of the Green Promise Initiative, including its mission, vision, founders, and projects aimed at inspiring environmental consciousness throughout sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world. He's an inspiring person and a friend of Sovereign Nature Initiative. We're really grateful that you're here, Chris. So yeah, take it away and take it away.
All right, so how many minutes do I have for this?
We've got, we've got the full hour here to talk, and you can speak maybe, I would say, if you want to talk 15, 20 minutes or even longer, that's fine. We'll also open up the floor for questions after that. Is that all right for you?
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. So I really thank the Sovereign Nature Initiative for this great opportunity to really speak on this very beautiful topic. It's
Chris, we're losing you again. I'm so sorry to say. We heard you say a beautiful topic, but then nothing after that. So sorry.
amazing, and I thank everyone who responded to the invite and really joined. So it's really great to see all of you. Very beautiful people around, very diversified, and
We're having some connection challenges still. Caitlin just mentioned in the chat that we have submissions through April 1st for Nature Speaks. Sorry, Chris, we're losing you. We're only getting like maybe 1/4 of what you're saying. And I really want everyone to hear everything that you're saying. Do you think there's a way to call in from a more stable line, like into the phone number?
oh, it's okay. It's okay. Let's work with it. So let's start again. Let's see how it goes. I hope everyone can hear. Now, one of the widest accepted theory of our planet is the model, and that was roughly the years. And
Hey, Chris, I have to interrupt you. Sorry to say, we're not able to hear you right now. I think we're gonna look, y'all, to a way to reconnect Chris with a voice line. And again, my appreciation for everybody's patience with our connections. And I appreciate Clinton chiming in. I really do want to hear everything Chris has to say.
I guess this is better now.
You think you got a better connection now?
Yes, I have a better connection now.
Oh, yes, you're so much clearer, Chris. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank God for that. Okay, I'm back.
All right.
Thank you for your patience. It's one of the problems we face here. So obviously, the Earth, which we are living in, it's a very beautiful planet. And of course, some of us that are here are already aware of the Big Bang model, how the universe came to being, and how our Earth came to being, and how certain single organisms were able to terraform our planet to what it is today. And all these energies, we got them from our life-giving sun, which the sun gave us was very useful for the life on Earth and made it possible for life to exist. And just like we know everything is interconnected, the plants needed the sunlight to grow, the animals, including humans, plants for food and oxygen that they produced. So our Earth, our home planet, for now, is the only planet that we know that has life in it. And it's very important that we understand this. Coming from the indigenous perspective of nature, I would speak on, I've not really met with other indigenous communities in other parts of the world, but I will speak on the indigenous community where I am and where I'm living and where I'm from Africa here. I come from the Igbo tribe. So most of the talk I'll be speaking today will basically from the indigenous perspective, so we can really understand more about what this eco-consciousness is, how our ancestors lived, and how they were able to protect this planet. The indigenous people had a holistic perspective about their natural world for thousands of years. Indigenous people in Africa, where we all know that life came from, were caretakers of their natural world, protecting their land, respecting all organisms found within their environment. And then in my tribe, Igbo, we passed down these connections to nature to generations. And we regarded nature with deep respect and see it with a deep sense of oneness. So we grew with the environment. In fact, this affected the way we eat, the way we fed, and the way we look at things. And one of the marvelous things about it was spiritual connectedness. It was very profound in the culture of the Igbos. And this gave them a sense of oneness, that they knew and they regarded the earth as mother. In various other indigenous places, they called it, in parts of Brazil, they called it Pachumama. At our own side, we called it Allah. So we had very great reverence and humility to Mother Earth. And our own views were holistic. And in African environmental ethics, recognized the interdependence and interconnectedness of all beings than individual being. So we lived in harmony with nature, realizing that the environment was the key to life. Well-being and everything possessed value. So we accorded our environment with huge respect, including the living and the non-living things in our ecosystem. The indigenous Igbos had this kind of intention of taking care of the environment and not to abuse it. It was very evident in our cultural heritage, which I've shared with most of my friends. And we had this thing called planting season. This planting season was very effective. So when a particular planting season is gone, you leave the land to fallow. And when the land fallows, when you want to come again, you have bountiful harvest, because they realized that excessive use of this land made the land prone to erosion. And also we had a forest, which we called evil forest. But I would not really tag it as evil, but that was the notion the indigenous people had, just to create, will I say create fear? So people do not enter into this forest to destroy it or to make permit sacrilegious act to it. Now this forest were all protected, and it was a taboo just to scare people in order to preserve them, as well as none other human beings in the forest. So the relationship shaped the universe around us, and the indigenous value had a linkage with nature, community, and man. And this relationship is defined as the culture of respect, dignity, and accommodation for all beings. For example, when my ancestors want to take something from the, maybe a particular root or herb from the forest to treat a patient, they happened to summon the spirits that are inborn in these trees. Why do they summon them? The belief that it's inappropriate to invade another person's space. It's just like what we are doing today. We go to the forest and we exploit everything without regard and respect. So they first seek permission through incantation from the spirit of the tree. So we were very environmentally friendly. And we recognize that other lives and creatures that existed in the environment are there to serve us. And if they are gone, it will create a missing link in the web of reality. So what happened? These values were lost between a twinkle of an eye. Still going further, the negative influences we got made the Africans, just like I said, I will be speaking from the African perspective, so we can really understand it and see it as the form of consciousness which we'll dive into. So it was the influence of external factors from the colonial masters made the Africans to forget his heritage and engaged in activities that were un-African to the detriment of the environment. And to a large extent, it became a dominant action of the day. It's worthy to note that the anti-environmental actions which we see today was un-African. And these indigenous people were aware of it. So, what are the values that made the indigenous Africans to hold this? Spiritually, they called it, I would call it the invisible and the tangible, which is spiritual, and the visible and the tangible, which is physical. So the invisible and intangible was comprised of God's spirits and ancestors. And the physical comprises of fellow humans, animal, plants, and objects that do not have biological life. So this was a complete unity and solidarity that nothing could break or destroy the existence. And so one does not rule another. So their interconnectedness manifested in one whole. For the African materials and non-materials, plants and animals, they were accorded respect as they serve as a missing link in the web of life. There was a culture of dignity, accommodation for all beings. We didn't really see the world as a different thing. We saw it as one. And we removed this egocentric view from us. We didn't see ourselves in the center of all these beings. We saw ourselves as a center, as part of this whole being. So it was a holistic system that I can't really overemphasize now. So how did things get this bad? How did things get this bad? We are in a period called the Anthropocene age, which I call the age of separateness from nature. We've seen this separateness in our way of life. We've seen the separateness in our families. We've seen the separateness in the things that matters. Thich Nhat Hanh said, we are here to awaken from our illusion of separateness. This is very important. One of the rising issues that brought about this cause of separateness from our culture, from the values that kept us alive, that kept our ancestors alive. Because if our ancestors were having the same ego which we had, of course, we wouldn't be alive today. One of the rising issues that caused this was the rise of religion, Judeo-Christian values. This contributed a whole lot of ills to the values of Africans and to the values of the modern day society. The connectedness indigenous people had with nature, just like in Europe, in parts of United Kingdom, they had the Druids there who communicated with earth spirits through the trees. When Judeo-Christian values came in, they called it paganism. And this became very dominant in our society today, that it repositioned us outside of nature. And which we might tag the most anthropocentric religion. 2, consumerism. This gave rise to capitalism, which had led to significant environmental degradation. It encourages mass consumption, consumption which is unsustainable, and we harm our environment for monetary gain. People are able to manipulate others so we can be able to consume more product, which impacts on the environment. This has led to a decline in the natural habitats and in the decline of biodiversity. Of course, the whole technology has done us very good. It has done us very good. Today, I wouldn't be talking to every one of us today if it was not for technology. But of course, there has to be a part where we can look at the values of the values and the wisdom of the ancient, and also look at our modern values and have a new overhaul of our systems and find a link where we can put this together. Very important. Now, people began to become anthropocentric when we started the fossil fuel economy, which drove rise to mines, factories, and mills, and virtually every country started, all through the detriment of the environment. Of course, many argues that it started when humans started farming. Some others argue that it was when we started to, but whenever we started anything, the thing is that the damage has been made. We've seen rise of planetary pollutions, climate change, and this has brought a whole depleting of our resources, mainly from developing nations. So the separatedness that we have gotten from this has made us lose the important values we could get. Modern humans have become biophobic. Our ancestors were biophilic. And every one of us has that in nature, has that inborn in us. We are all biophilic. But at some stage, we began to lose consciousness of who we were. Then, what has been the consequences of our action is glaring clear all over. It's not just something that I should say, but I just have to say it. We've had several environmental disasters that has gone just because we've lost consciousness. The human footprint on the environment is stark and alarming. Today, if you come to my community in the Niger Delta, we have issues within. You go to parts of parts of Brazil, they have issues with deforestation. And we forget that there is well, during the COVID-19 period, we saw how connected we were. Just a little flu from a part of Wuhan affected every one of us, and our lives changed up. So it might not bother you on what is happening in Brazil or what is happening in Nigeria. It's just very common that when certain things happen in other parts of the world, We don't get the real attention which we are expected to get. These actions have suffocated the earth and in turn has led to ocean acidification and global warming. Let's understand this, that life began in the ocean and it took life 4 billion years for it to rise to give us what we are today. The vegetations we saw and every other thing. And we forget that the same conditions that the ocean gives is the same condition. Do you know why life occurred in the ocean? It occurred in the ocean because they had protection for over these billions of years. They had a form of protection. So life was able to gradually, through patience and all that, come up. Today we have a forest, which we call the lungs of the earth. We have the oceans, which we also call the lungs of the earth due to the planktons and their activities that give us oxygen. But we are short of those ideas, even most of us who are learned and who have gone through these topics. We know this, but we've contributed more and more to it. In my own culture, when we were small, we didn't have what we call plastics. We had this banana tree leaves, which we use for packaging of foodstuffs. And we had this raffia, which we use to go to the farm with to get our products. But of course, today, the production of plastic has, in our society, has created a great deal of waste for us. Tons of plastic created. In fact, in parts of the Pacific Ocean, we have a sea full of plastics. But we all know this. But why haven't we stopped producing plastics? We know how long it takes plastics to degrade. We know how long it does. But we continue to use this because our consciousness has been lost. Every organization is preaching about going green. Every organization is preaching about going green. But now we are more aware than of the threats facing our planet are due to industrial revolution, growing population, extensive agriculture and all this. And experts predict that if our actions continue as more as this, there would be a disorientation in our ecosystem, and it will truly fail. What approach can we use now to revive this connection? First, the normal human being is, or the average human being is very selfish, yes. And one of the organizations that I joined recently, where we talked about sacrifice for sustainability, we discussed very much on what it means and how sacrifice can really save our planet. How can we change this approach of making it It can only feel impossible to go eco-friendly as you wish, because you do not want to give up some point. So it's easy to feel that going green is useless if you think that your own actions won't have a huge impact on the world at large. But these little things which we can do, which I will explain later, although most of us know of them, if the billions of people in the planet can do this, we can have a ripple effect, and this can bring a change for us. So the truth is this: one person's action can make a difference. One person's actions can make a difference. But the first actions to start from you. One is through self-awareness. Through self-awareness. Understand that nature and humanity, they are intertwined. Self-awareness is one ability to not only be conscious or alert in the environment, but also to be able to understand your purpose within it. Can we find our purpose? Yes. Today, I were eco-evangelist and several other things. I decided to bear this title not as an eco warrior, as many people will call it, to be able to preach the green gospel, which is the truth for every one of us to understand this. So self-awareness will place us to understand our purpose on the planet. To make us to understand our purpose on the planet. Now, what can you do? First, wisdom and understanding of oneself, the ability to recognize your personal strengths and weakness, a commitment to greater good rather than self-serving individuals, confidence in the face of adversity. Generally speaking, self-aware individuals can see themselves through the eyes of others in the case of the natural world. When we become self-aware, we begin to look at our actions and habits and lifestyles through the lens of environmental impact. Understand that you yourself as human is nature. Our human body is just filled with nature. Our skin alone. If we were to say how many of our body components are more human, some people said it's just 1/10 of it. Just look at our skin. The microorganisms that help us to aid our digestion. Understand what other insects are doing to protect you. Pollination, photosynthetic organisms like the trees and planktons that give us oxygen for free. Becoming self-aware would give us the understanding of our purpose. If I'm to ask this question, how well do you know your local environment? 1, how many days till the moon is full in your own place? What soil series are you standing on? What was the total rainfall in your area between last year? Of course, most of us won't be able to understand this. Where does your garbage go? What are the 5 grasses in your area? What species are extinct in your place? You might not really understand this because we are not eco-conscious. I believe after this talk, most of us we have a rethink of our purpose here. Rethinking of our choices, very important. When you have the environment at heart, you will rethink your choices. At a point, you would understand on how we can be able to support local products. We eat less of meat and animal products. We use less of energies. We avoid to waste precious resources of energy and water. Choose to work. Offices, implement this. Every hand must be on deck for it, for a total paradigm shift. From ego to empathy, from separation to synchronicity, from fear to courage. We can be able to activate this consciousness no matter our fields of endeavors. Every hand must be on deck so we can possibly stop the devastating effect of the planet and change the irreversible consequences. So we can indicate much of the damage caused to the environment already. And wrapping it up for more questions so I can give, there's so much things for us to discuss. But wrapping it up, this times needs a new form of consciousness from the point of the indigenous perspective and the modern knowledge. If we can do this, we can be able to have a new whole system change, sustainable for future generations and sustainable for our own lives. There are several organizations that are doing these beautiful works, which each and every one of us can join. I believe it's a collective action. It's a collective action. So we ourselves should get enough knowledge on this environmental field so that we can be able to understand environmental issues in our communities and stay up to date with it and be able to promote environmental awareness in our community. Join different organizations, the conscious movements that are going on across the globe. Several organizations, just like a Sovereign Nation Initiative here, they are using technology to effect change. We can be able to build a world that we can really call us, that our future can really say that that our generations really did a very great job for us. When you find yourself in nature, let us always have time to have a connectivity with it through experiencing the divine. When you go to nature, remember who you truly are. Be comfortable with yourself. Remember that you're connected to all being. Behold the beauty of nature. Let's be able to understand that nature reminds us of death too, so you can appreciate your life and the natural cycle. Looking at nature, you will learn that there is nothing wrong with you. Some of us are suffering with self-esteem because we're not being conscious. But nature will bring up this consciousness in you that you see when you go to the forest, you see the whole beautiful biodiversity. And it's display of glory. Some trees are fat, some are skinny, some tall, some short, some flowers are yellow. And none of them says, what's wrong with me? This is wrong. I'm not supposed to be like this. They are working together to create an impact in all levels. So today, the Green Promise Initiative, my organization, decided to work on this fact of inspiring environmental consciousness. And we are doing this through the credo of education, environmental education, because we understand that this is a very beautiful point. This is a very beautiful path we can choose for our future generations and for us. We're also embarking on sustainable livelihood projects. I know my slide is not really working well, but it's still important that where I come from in Africa, we have this issue with livelihood. So we're using our opportunities, just like what other organizations are doing, to create more and more sources of incomes for indigenous communities who are really impacted with climate change. So I thank you all for listening to me, and it's great. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. I just want to say on behalf of everyone at Sovereign Nature Initiative, we're really grateful for your voice, your perspective. I didn't know what exactly we'd get into today, but I'm leaving this first part of your talk really inspired. So I appreciate that you brought this really huge perspective. And I especially appreciate the indigenous perspective and the discussion of the history that brought us to where we are. And I also really appreciate the technology that allows us to talk with you today and to share your voice with this group that's here today. And I know we have a few questions. I'd love to hear also, I think in this conversation, just maybe a little bit more about what Green Promise is up to, so we can know how to follow you and your work. But maybe before we get to that, let's just take a question. I see there's a hand that was raised. I think this China BTC Willems. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question? Okay. Hello. Maybe I'll turn it back to you then, Chris. Can you just talk a little bit more about what projects you're most passionate about right now, working at Green Promise, either in Nigeria or elsewhere? Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're working on?
One of the important projects which we are working on right now is environmental education, because this is very important for our future generations not to get yoked with what we've gotten ourselves into, the mess we've done. So we're trying to reconnect them back to the best ways of doing things in protecting the environment. But it's like a whole new curriculum, but I would say a part-time curriculum, because it's not easy to change the whole curriculum of schools and that. So we're taking this message to schools. We're taking this message to people in the universities, to younger people in the universities, so they can be able to start up greater things, and wherever they find themselves into, they can be able to have this consciousness of who they are and be able to do things in line with what nature has intended them to do.
It's beautiful. It's obvious from your talk, Chris, that you are an educator and as well as you said, an eco-evangelist. And so it seems to me that there's a lot that we need to learn about where we are. I loved your questions about where are we the rainfall in our area, what extinction, where does our garbage go? Like, these are so important with education, with children, to become more conscious of those questions, like where are you in the earth, so that it's not just about connection and the internet allows us to talk to everybody, but it's also about, we can learn more about the local, about the life that's just right all around us. we have other questions for our guest today? Feel free to put in the chat or raise your hand or just even unmute yourself. It can be a fluid conversation for a few more minutes here. I was writing down a lot of what you said, Chris, during the talk, and so I just want to surface some of the beautiful language that came up. Again, I wrote in the chat biophobic and biophilic. I thought such a beautiful terms to think about. And I mentioned, or sorry, I wrote down as well, early in your talk, you talked about seeking permission from plants and animals. And I wonder what that would look like, from Sovereign Nature Initiative's perspective. What does permission look like from a plant or animal? How do we reconnect with that exchange that is healthy for both sides of the, let's say, plant and animal, or the non-human and the human? How do we give each other somehow permission to exchange, to interact? I also love the lungs theme of the ocean. The ocean and the forests are our lungs, both of them, the plankton in the ocean and the trees on the land. That's just a beautiful image as well that I took away from your talk.
Yeah. You said about asking permission. Yeah. One was the indigenous people actually had this form of permission because, for example, one wants to take one of the roots of a plant to for healing. He happens to say this, that I take this plant from you, this portion from you, to go heal this person. When I'm going to use it on this person, let healing be administered there. It's quite funny. It's quite funny, but the indigenous people did it. But why this was being done was just not to invade the privacy of another. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, one more question. First of all, thanks for inviting me. I didn't really know what I expect here, so I'm really happy to be here. There's so much good energy around, definitely. So my question would be, like, you said that the knowledge you had about the native animals, plants, and all how that works together, how was that shared? How was that given from one generation to the next one? Like, how is the style you have on giving over this information?
I think you went mute. Okay. So I said something. You went mute when you were at the ending of your talk. Okay.
Oh.
So okay. So it's just a process which usually happens. Like, from my own part, we had people called rainmakers. These people were able to use indigenous knowledges to induce rainfall, to hold rainfall, and to stop rainfall. In fact, we still see that in my community today. Now, usually what they do is you have to transfer your knowledge to your children, to your offspring. But over the years, we've really stopped seeing such. Why? Because of the issue of religion, which has actually made people to call these actions diabolic and a form of paganism. So once people eventually joined a new religion, those values were lost. So it was very important. Some of the things on medicinal plants have virtually been lost. Of course, the modern medicines are taking over, but it's still important that we still ask questions on how to get more of these knowledges.
Yeah, to rediscover it. Yeah, thanks for your answer, definitely. I can really, yeah, feel that also this religionist thing like split the spiritual world and the bodily world completely from each other, which made it also okay to just say, okay, nature is something to be robbed, you know, to just take whatever we want to. So yeah, thanks for that answer.
I saw that in the chat, Caitlin asked us to turn on our video if you're all comfortable. It's nice to take a screenshot, a little selfie all together while we're here. And I would especially love to see you again, Chris. We've been looking at your still picture, but hey, it's nice to see you. So yeah, if you're comfortable turning your video on, let's grab a selfie as we are in the home stretch wrapping up today. And thank you all for joining us as well. Really beautiful conversation today, and it's not the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning of the conversation. We are really committed to conversations happening across continents. This is part of our initiative, and so we're especially grateful to be connected with you today in Nigeria, and also all over the world. I know sometimes we have people type in where they're calling in from, and if you want to do that, that's great. But we just appreciate everybody joining us today. Let's take a selfie.
Yeah, I'll give us a countdown. So taking the screenshot in 3, 2, 1. I'll do one more. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks, everyone. It's so good to see your faces. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, if I can just quote you, Chris, one more time back to everybody. I loved what you said when you said, we are here to awaken from our illusion of separateness.
That's beautiful.
So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll record these sessions as well, so we'll broadcast on our YouTube channel that you can share with your friends. And we have a bunch of other talks from the past about technology, about art, about nature's perspectives. So please stay in touch with us and stay in touch as well with Green Promise. And we can wrap it up here. Unless there's anybody else who wants to chime in or has a last question, last comment.
Yeah, I was just thinking throughout, since I come from a bit more of a technical background, like, there's so much wealth of knowledge with sort of these indigenous communities and how we can preserve it. And somewhere it kind of rings to me that, yeah, in this Web3 space, there is sort of these platforms which can hold on to these information more immutably, and help us preserve it in some shape or form. So yeah, I guess there's no easy answers for it, but yeah, I think the work that Sovereign Nature is doing is probably is I think quite interesting, and bridging this gap between sort of working towards nature and helping nature while sort of also being involved in the cutting edge technology space, I think. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks again, Chris, and thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll all go research the rainfall in our immediate area.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Chris again.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.